March 26th, we took a couple of weeks off here, Austin. I was traveling. I was busy with some stuff, which I can't talk about just yet. But I am super excited to be back. And did you say you switched back to Chrome?
I switched back to Chrome. Yeah. It's so
Why?
sad. I really believed that Safari could work for me. And, the thing that really drove the hammer home is I would be trying to log into Okta for different client work, and like one password just would not load. And it's this well-known bug in Safari where like sometimes Safari like blocks one password. And all the other stuff I could put up with, our podcast not working from Safari being one of them. But the whole like one having to physically type in passwords in Safari was just like too much for me. So I abandoned it. It was a great experiment. I'm sad that I lost my original browser, Arc, which is a Chrome-based browser. I think that the CEO of that company made a huge mistake getting rid of Arc. I guess although it is part of Atlassian, so maybe we'll come back now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I miss you, Arc. Arc was the best browser in the world. So I'm back to Chrome.
Oh, no. Well, welcome back. I've been on Chrome my entire life, I feel. I think I tried OpenAI's Atlas, and that's also getting shut down, I believe. That was news, right? This week where OpenAI is like all focused back. They're killing Sora. They're killing Atlas. They're killing a bunch of other stuff and going all in on the same Claude strategy. Why do we start there?
I know. It's and for what it's worth, like I just don't know how much I need AI in my browser when I'm browsing. The thing that I really care a lot about actually is having my browser be accessible to Claude code. And I don't actually have that solution figured out. I'm sure there's people, maybe if somebody's listening to this and there's a great solution that you or they know of, they should email me. But what I really would like to have happen is that I can be working with Claude Code in an agent session, and it has the ability just to not open a separate Chromium browser, which has its own session cookies, but like literally just open the one that is on my screen. And the nice to have would be like if you could actually hook it up with a remote connection. Are you familiar with remote connections with Claude Code?
I mean, how is that? Like, that's basically a dispatch, or is that something else you're talking about?
Oh my God. It is so much more than dispatch.
Okay.
This is what's crazy, Pranav, is like things are happening so fast that I don't even think people know the obvious things out there. If you're in a Claude Code session, there are two commands. One is you can tap --RC, which, so if you do like, Claude --, it's kind of giving signals to Claude Code when you're in the terminal. One that people probably know is Claude --, resumes a session. So you can pick the session that you have. And what's really fun is if you spend some time, you can actually have Claude build a session management tool for you so that you can explore your old sessions and pick them whenever you want. Your sessions are stored as JSON on your computer locally. But one of the things you can do is add a --RC when you start a Claude session. And what that's is saying to Claude is, hey, this is a remote connection Claude session. I want this to be accessible to the Claude app. And so I made a command that starts all of my Claude sessions with RC. So they're all accessible then inside of the Claude Code app, which means you can use your local machine to do work from your phone wherever. And so one of my favorite things to do these days is I start all my sessions in Claude Code with RC. They all become accessible. And for the people who are...
Okay, I get it. So basically you're saying you're starting them on your machine, on your Mac, and they're available on your mobile app.
Yes, but they don't use cloud services. They use your actual machine, Pranav. So all of your MCPs, all of your APIs, all your skills, all your directory that you've spent all this wonderful time building on your machine, guess what? It's accessible over the internet. As long as there's a little bit of work, you have to make sure that your computer doesn't sleep when it's closed. So you can just ask Claude, hey, how do I make my machine never sleep when it's closed? Make sure it's connected to the internet, and now you have a server sitting in your laptop whenever you want.
So I did that this weekend because I was running into issues where I wanted stuff to like just always be running behind the scenes, and I changed my Mac setting to just never sleep if it's powered in. But I'm like almost tempted to just set up an actual Mac, full-blown Mac desktop at home for this purpose, right? That there's like the amount of productivity gains that's going to bring me is going to be crazy. It's the same thing as like Mac Mini and OpenClaw or whatever, but just using my Claude. I don't need OpenClaw. Why do you need OpenClaw? Like it's just running in Claude.
The only reason for OpenClaw is like, here's this thing, right? Like you have to tell the computer to create sessions, and you're creating those sessions, right? Now, if they're on your local machine, it uses Claude Max, which is a fixed cost, $200 a month.
Sure.
If you now have a server that doesn't have Claude Max, now you're running API tokens. Now maybe, Paramark is subsidizing your costs. You don't care if it's expensive. I mean, that there is a lot of people out there, they don't care. They're like, hey, I'll just create sessions with the Anthropic key and my API key and I'll pay for it. But I am a humble, poor consultant who does not want to pay thousands of dollars for these tokens. So
wait, hang on. I know you are not poor. We talked about this right before this call about you are doing amazing work for some amazing companies and you are highly in demand. So folks, if plug for Austin, he's being super humble. If you need help with your tech marketing stack, right? So everything that you need to do to get your marketing engine going, he's your guy. You need to call him. I'm pretty sure he's oversubscribed, has no time, but you need to talk to him. All right.
It's false more time because of Claude Code, but
there we go.
but yeah, so Pranav, put a computer in your basement. The reason why you have ClaudeBot is like, what if you want your machine to work overnight without input from you? Right? Like let's say, for example, you take Saturday and you put 5 or 6 different projects on a linear board with all your ideas for them. And you spend a whole hour documenting the things you want to build, the PRDs for them. Like you spend a lot of time in detail putting these tickets together. And you're like, here are the 5 things I want to build. I want to build like a contactor directory. I want to build like a health and training app. I want to build something for my investors. I want to do X. So you have these tickets, right? In today's workflow, we're speeding up really quickly, but you have to help Claude Code answer questions. It's going to have questions about what the design architecture should be, where you want to deploy it, blah, blah, blah. And what that requires is for you to babysit Claude Code sessions.
Yep.
The whole purpose of ClaudeBot is to say, no, actually, if you give sufficient information in context and memory to your computer, you can let your computer guide the rest of the agents to continue the work stream, and then you just validate the work afterwards. So overnight, ClaudeBot is running its own version of Claude, and it's directing Claude to do the work for you.
Totally get it. I'm with you.
Yeah, I talked about this in the article. The only limitation right now is cost, because running that overnight for like infinite number of queries is really expensive, which is the reason why people are seriously considering like, do I just go buy a $10,000 Mac Pro and put a local model on it, like one of the Chinese models, Qwen. But hey, the latest version of Qwen is as good as Opus was in December. So you're like, okay, now my computer is running Opus 5, whatever, and it's directing all my Claude Maxes to do all the work that I designed. So all I really have to do now is like be thoughtful up front in designing the work that I need to do, and then keep guiding my little Mac Pro to kind of continuously improve.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you. And I think that all tracks. And it's weird. We started this episode of GTMN all about go-to-market with Claude and OpenClaw, but that is the reality, right? Like you look anywhere, my X feed, my LinkedIn feed, my YouTube feed, it's everywhere. And like Q1 has changed. I think this is like a fundamental pivotal change in all of go-to-market. I was at a conference last week or the week before in Phoenix, Arizona. It was a bunch of B2B CMOs, and nobody, like, I don't think there was anybody who didn't talk about how Claude has changed their lives. So it's an interesting time. I want to start with a couple of news items that are interesting, and this is a couple of weeks old, but fun things going on. So did you hear about this? That there's a federal judge who has banned Perplexity's shopping agent from Amazon orders. And then there was an appeals court that reversed the ban, so now they're allowed in Amazon again. So this is an interesting sort of push and pull happening in the ecosystem. I don't know if you've been following, where what is an agent allowed to do on any platform and what is it not? And especially like Amazon's like trying to fight it in a big way. So interesting, future, like it's not obvious and clear whether this whole idea of like agents doing stuff for you is going to take off or not. All these larger businesses are trying to fight it. Any reactions to this, like from your perspective?
I mean, I just feel like I keep coming back to what you said at the start, which is like, it is so hard to predict what's going to happen based on how much is changing right now. And there's a part of me that thinks like, okay, maybe we'll hit this plateau in the next quarter or two, and like this will all be a lot about nothing. There's also a part of me that thinks like, okay, the step change from Opus, the last Opus model that was released in December, that along with a bunch of other stuff is like the reason why we're experiencing so much change now, and why I think agents now can be useful. So what will happen when the next version of the model comes out? And not just like the next kind of incremental version, but like the next major model update in say 6 months.
I'll tell you my reaction to this. Like, I was thinking about my own personal shopping habits, and over the last like 3 or 4 months, I've definitely switched to asking Gemini for
Yeah.
everything, right? So like
Yeah.
I was like frustrated with some like skincare product, and I was like, you have all my skincare history for the last like 2 years. And I just asked it like, hey, with all the conditions and the, things that I have, here's what I need to do. It spat out 3 things. Now, this was interesting. It didn't spit out just one thing. It spat out 3 things, and then I went and looked at each of those 3 things on Amazon and then made the order. So the question is, does it get good enough where you can place the order within the LLM? Or, and that's what this case was all about, right? Like, do you let Gemini, Perplexity, Claude
Yeah.
make the purchase on your behalf from Amazon, or do you still force the user to go to Amazon and take action? Because that then allows Amazon to upsell, cross-sell other things to you, show you ads within Amazon, and so on and so forth, right? So
I
I
think
do
there's an
think the
agent approval
consumer,
process, Pranav. I think before we see full agent buying, we see an agent approval button that pops up in GPT and Claude, where the agent is ready to purchase and they have your creds and they can make the purchase, but you just have to click a button right from Claude. Or maybe it's a notification message sent to your phone, or maybe it's an email, but like there's probably still human in the loop for quite some time, but we just make it frictionless. And if I
mm,
think about what I would want, I would probably want that until AI is good enough that I have full trust in the outcomes, and we're just not there yet, you know?
yeah. And I can't imagine like Gemini, why wouldn't Gemini just allow you to buy directly from Google Shopping?
Totally.
They have Google Wallet. Like, it should all just be one click. It makes complete sense for certain type of purchases. But
Did
yeah,
you
so that, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, there's two things that come to mind. Like, one is the intermix between like agent permissions and human permissions is very fascinating. I have been experiencing this in my own life recently where I've created a service token for my ClaudeBot and I'm giving him access to some tools. And like in the back of my head, I'm like, I should probably be more careful. But also, he doesn't do anything unless I explicitly ask. So, what is the risk? The risk is him kind of assuming I want to do something and using my credentials nefariously. So I think like that's a very interesting space around how can humans give full trust and autonomy with guardrails to like prevent really bad stuff from happening. And the second thing that comes to mind is, and maybe you saw this on Twitter this weekend, but there was like a malicious version of a third-party library that is
Mm,
downloadable by Python. And what happened is, probably what you're seeing when you're using Claude code is like, it just suggests random libraries because it can do research really quickly on GitHub. And there's lots of independent libraries out there. And that's largely been like the way of code for the last 20 years is like build with little mini libraries of things that you want and need. Try not to build stuff that you don't want to maintain. And so I personally have gotten very accustomed to just downloading libraries of code that I then use for the applications that I'm building. But this thing that happened was like one of these libraries was like I think it was an injectable prompt. I don't know the exact details, but it was able to get like SSH keys, AWS credentials, like all this stuff that's tied on your computer
oh God.
because it effectively made a prompt to go scrape it. So like
Oof.
there are a bunch of people who are installing this library for something that's like pretty benign and I think it had millions of downloads and all of a sudden this actor is collecting like your AWS key, right?
Yeah.
So how this ties back to the shopping example is like, on one hand, I think a lot of us want to trust
Right.
entirely, but the unfortunate side of technology is that there are bad actors who utilize it to make this harder. So it'll be interesting to see how this evolves with the major players. And again, that's why I also think like human in the loop will just remain for quite a long time
You
until
can
they
imagine like,
are resolved.
2FA and MFA evolving to this, right? So in that example, like Gemini doing something, but then there's a 2FA on your actual mobile phone that is not connected to those systems, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine like tools like 1Password or whoever else is playing in the space, they should go all in on, that as their, next big
Agent
AI push.
permissions.
Agent permissions, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Especially for the enterprise. All right. Lots of other interesting things happening. So let's talk about this one. Google Ads is now mandating AI voiceovers for Performance Max videos. So essentially what they're doing is starting March 20th, so just like last week, they are going to layer AI generated voiceovers. If you have a Performance Max video, they're automatically just going to create the voiceover for you. And you don't have to do anything. They're just doing it. They're launching it. You have to opt out if you want to opt out.
Oh
Otherwise,
my
it's going to
God.
be done by default. So
God.
yeah, they're going all in on this one.
Why do you think that is? I mean, voiceover seems just like an odd place to be a hill to die on, you know?
I think more and more you're going to see like Google, Meta, Amazon, all of these companies make it easier and easier for these smaller brands to create, these artifacts, videos, assets that otherwise would have required a lot more time and effort. And the first version is going to be crap, but I think in as we've seen with all the AI models, it's going to get really good really quickly. And, you've got, I don't know if you've seen some of these Performance Max videos, but they're basically like you drop all of your assets, right? So if you have a product, you have your brand guidelines, you have a logo, you have, colors, and then it just like does some basic animation. So if it's doing that basic animation anyway, then you might as well, tell them something about your brand. And it just says, I'm just making this up, the lightest shoes on the market for marathon runners, right? And that's it. That's the voiceover. And it's like a 6-second ad in front of a YouTube reel. And it, very nicely produced, deep voice, perfect for video. Yeah, why wouldn't I take that? So I think it works. I was just surprised by there's a 10-day window to opt out. And otherwise you're just opted in, which is like wild.
Like you're in it.
Yep. And then you might have some funny voices. By the way, so I use the Google News app on my phone, and they launched a new feature, which is 2 AIs basically create a 15-minute podcast with all the top news on a daily basis. So now in my car ride to work, I just tap the voice listen feature and it just like takes all of my Google News and gives it to me. It sounds like any other news app. It's perfect. So
pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think a fascinating business opportunity for anybody out there who's looking for things to build is a dynamic morning podcast that's customized entirely for every person who's listening. So rather than have one pod, you log in and you get your own custom pod. So like what you're saying, but it's a collection of the things that you care about. And so what you do is you actually spend some time looking through your existing sources of data, like the places that you listen to and get information from. And I talked to you about this maybe a week or two ago. I built a version of this personally. I have like my own consulting software called Taurus. I get a morning briefing, and in that morning briefing, there's a lot of data like health data and action items and client stuff. But towards the end, there's a list of 20 articles from the prior day. And it pulls from Stratechery, it pulls from Planet Money, it pulls from Lenny's, it pulls from the Wall Street Journal, it pulls from the Atlantic. And the problem I was solving is probably what you're thinking too, which is like I have a limited amount of time in the morning to go drive to work, and I have so many sources of information. How do I actually keep up to date on all these things? And so the first version of that is literally just like imagine like a mega RSS collector, like with the only difference is that if you collected all the RSS feeds, it would be like 100 articles. And so you use Opus to kind of think about your preferences and pick the things that are most relevant daily. And that's just like a daily brief I have that I get. It's not too hard to say, well, let's just productize that. Let's let people enter the names of the things that they already look at on Substack or other sites. And now let's run a prompt at the end that generates a 2-way conversation, BPNs, or whatever style combo.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% with you on that. All right, couple of other things that are happening in this world. So Webflow, I'm sure you've heard of Webflow. They acquired a company called Vidoso to launch autonomous content marketing. Had you heard of Vidoso? Like I had come across them, but I didn't know they were a big deal. But there's a AI like video company. And so that's going to be integrated directly into Webflow, allowing users to create SEO optimized video assets based on their, site's design and data. So that's an interesting little play, but like going all in on video for web content. And I know why. It seems like there was a new update from Google that has made, there we go. It's called multimodal indexing. I don't know if you heard about this, but this is like now live 100% globally, which is enabling the search engine to index and understand video, audio, and podcasts at the same depth as text. So your video content, and you could be an early adopter here if you're doing a lot of video or podcasting or any type of audio, that is a net new, deep information that Google previously was not indexing as much as it does now. So these two things seem very related. like Webflow going all in on Vidoso, and then Google launching this multimodal indexing, which is fascinating to me.
So I have a question for you. This is a great debate I've been having with a couple of marketing leaders and even with one of the teams that I'm working with, which is, Webflow, when it first started, was revolutionary because it had a UI for people to interact with and build what was traditionally very hard websites in HTML and JavaScript. And I think over time, as the complexity of the product grew and it could handle more complex use cases with animations and stuff like that, it actually became a tool for front-end engineers. Because I remember specifically at Ramp, a conversation with one of our directors of engineering was like, hey, we're actually the ones, engineering is the one that's making the code changes in Webflow these days, and we're the one approving branches. And so it's this interesting thing where like it started with a value prop to marketers, but then became so complex that engineers had to be the ones to use and approve of it. And now we're in this place where I'm like, actually, I don't know how doing something in Webflow would be easier than just writing code with Claude, right?
Yeah.
Even for a technical growth engineer, they'd probably much rather write code. They'd probably rather do TypeScript or, React. And for
it's interesting.
Like you could just write Claude prompts. So where do you think website creation is going, and how do you think about those problems?
So we use Framer, big fan of Framer.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, and my team was creating a new website on Framer for something, the project that we're working on. And we kept running into this issue where staging and prod would behave differently. And it's like that is the complication with this whole space. Yes, you can ship code. Like we all can just, Claude code, and Framer has like AI capabilities, so you can like do AI within Framer. But the problem is when you get stuck on like complicated flows that just are behaving differently because of some weird caching issue, you're kind of stuck in this like, hard spot. So I would say, yes, do all of the things with AI, but you still have to pick a platform that's helping you when you are trying to deploy from staging to production. There's like 10 people working on the stuff, and you can break shit. And that collaborative stuff is where, proper CMSs, whether it's a Webflow, whether it's a Framer, whether it's a Sanity plus something else on top, right? Whatever is your tool of choice, you're still going to need sophisticated tech at that scale. But if it's a small operation, yeah, I don't think you need to worry about all of this.
Yeah. Well, I just also think like, so a team starting from scratch, do you start from scratch with Framer? Do you start from scratch with Webflow? Or do you start from scratch with Claude Code? And I think the answer is most people, especially solo founders, can just start from scratch with Claude Code.
I agree. I'm thinking about it like if I were starting a company, again, from scratch, would I do Framer or would I do Claude Code? I'd probably do Claude Code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I also just think about like, most marketing teams are small in nature and scrappy, and usually it's growth engineering or some product team that owns the website surface area. If it's in code, it's already like you get the benefit of just being able to use Claude Code directly. But if you're in, I'm having this struggle with a couple of folks I'm working with right now. Like the value prop of Webflow and Framer is that it's supposed to make it easier for marketers to update the website. But I'm like, what is easier, to learn how to do Framer and Webflow or to teach yourself Claude Code? I think it's probably easier and better today to learn how to use Claude Code.
Did we just short the entire CMS market?
Well, no. So the thing with the CMS is, I think like even if you build a website in Claude Code, you still need a CMS. And
I think Claude Code the CMS.
You could, but same with CRM. Like yes, you can, but there's a lot of features of a CRM that are hard to build. Do you really want to stand up and manage a database, which is what you need for a CMS?
So this brings a really interesting point, because I was looking at this company yesterday called 20. I'm sure you came across them. They're building a open source CRM and giving you full like GraphQL and, I forget like some other API access to all the objects and what have you. And then the business model is you can deploy this on your own, or, you can deploy it on their cloud. So they're taking a different approach to the AI CRM market. But the reason I was thinking about this is like, maybe that's what happens, where you have a resurgence of open source and you pull that GitHub. They've got like 40,000 stars or 4,000 stars. I can't remember. This is like wildly popular on GitHub. Yeah, just crazy. And so you can just pull that to your, you can download that and then just build on top of it. And then you've got the best of both worlds. You've got the CMS foundation built in, and you can, go crazy with it. So I think there's an option here where open source makes a massive comeback.
Oh, completely. I mean, Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's this trade-off between what do you build yourself that's easy and what do you build that's hard? And I'm increasingly finding like things that require databases, you should try to find a third party for.
Mm,
If things that don't require databases like front end matter, easy to build with Claude Code and easy for
yep.
you to manage in a GitHub repo. And so that's just like for a really classic example is like nobody's going to build a payments processor. They're just going to integrate Stripe
Correct.
because it's so
Yep.
easy.
Yep.
And similarly, like maybe with CRM, like people are not going to really think about building the database infrastructure for CRM, the core primitives, but they'll totally like throw their own front end at the CRM, right?
Yep. Yep.
Like
Yep.
you can make it a single page, you can make it an object page, you can have a multi-object page, but it's just like the rails are already ready for you.
And I had an interaction with another friend of mine who had built or was helping their friend build a storefront. And I was asking them, like, why did you build it? Why didn't you just use Shopify? Shopify is like so cheap and accessible. And he's like, I just found it easier to build it rather than worry about learning Shopify. Exact same conversation. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whether it's
Especially since,
CRM, whether it's, e-com, like the world is just shifting majorly beneath our feet. Okay, a couple more things that are interesting, Austin. So both Salesforce and HubSpot, so back in the CRM world, have restructured their partner programs for AI. So this is news. They're basically now going back to all of their partner programs and forcing agencies to specialize in AI deployment. And so not just about platform support, but like essentially how do you drive AI usage and AI tooling within the systems? And I would imagine like every Salesforce and HubSpot consulting shop is now just going to be pitching themselves as like, hey, we know how to maximize AI usage on these platforms, which is fascinating to me. So, different approach from an AI native CRM, but like, hey, let's put this entire army of professional services people
oh my
into
God.
doing AI work.
All the professional services companies out there that specialized in deploying, resources to help you build against the SOAP API just became way more lucrative overnight from Opus.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think the same thing's going to happen with Shopify agencies, right? So you've got all these
yeah.
web development and e-com agencies, and they're all going to have to pivot to becoming AI agencies, basically.
Well, maybe. I mean, I think an agency can still specialize, but I think what's important actually for buyers is to realize like these things are no longer hard to do. You're
Mm-hmm.
paying somebody smart to use Claude. So I like this is also a debate that's happening is like who's going to benefit the most from the frontier of Claude? I think people with specialized knowledge in fields for a long time are going to maintain the advantage. As a great example, like even with me and you, it's like, okay, I've been doing marketing technology for 10 years. I understand it really well. I don't think people are suddenly going to be using Claude to replace me. I think maybe people who are just starting can get a lot further without me. But for the biggest organizations who have money and want to pay experts for things, the value that I'm providing is that actually I can do it 10x faster and 10x more efficiently. Now, whether that efficiency gets passed on to the customer or not is a different story. But you can imagine, like, say you hire a Shopify agency to build your back end shopping portal
Mm-hmm.
for you. You care about the outcome as a business owner. If that outcome is achieved 5x faster because they're using Claude, who cares? The only thing that will change is like if I have an engineer who says, hey, I can probably use Claude Code and build the same thing that this agency is building in the same time. Well, now I have negotiating leverage to go ask the question of the agency, can you do it faster or can you do it better in some way and how? And it remains to be seen whether like what scope you're working on is totally buildable with Claude or if the knowledge that you have from your specialty actually means that you're better able to babysit and produce an outcome that matters. And it's unclear. Like I think I told you this a week or two ago. I built this MarTech demigod agent that's a collection of all my work and a bunch of work that I care about in the MarTech space. And I've been deploying that agent or collection of agents against a lot of problems that I'm solving. And like 9 times out of 10, it does as good or better a job than I can. The question is like, can other people produce that set of
Nope.
agents?
You
And
are
even
unique.
if they could they validate what it's saying to be truthful or not?
Exactly. That's the evaluation is the hardest part. And you know how to evaluate the work of those agents, but I can tell you that 99% of other people don't. And yeah.
So I think for things that don't require specialty, there's a great article, I think, in The Atlantic, which is like, why are all the bros in Silicon Valley suddenly into taste? Like, this is what it means. I think for things that are not sophisticated or hard or require technical expertise, we're using this term taste as reference to like basically good judgment. Like, are you able to
Mm,
use your brain to look at what the output is and make a determination of whether it's good enough or not? And to be really clear, I think there's a lot of things, especially in marketing, that just require being thoughtful and smart, don't require a
mm,
specialty at all. And
mm.
I think that's the reason why a lot of marketers are scared, is because, they have a specialty that is much more in the line of sight of smart people being able to solve with agents.
Yeah, totally fair. Okay, on that note, I have a couple of interesting pieces of news here. So WPP, which is a big agency, one of the big four, they have announced that they're shifting their strategy towards outcome pricing for AI services. It's a new billing model where instead of billable hours, they're going to have essentially fixed cost performance guarantees based on specific sales or lead gen targets. I don't think I've ever seen an agency do this. So this is actually quite interesting and
Crazy.
innovative. Yeah. So this is like one of the big ones saying, hey, our OpenAI platform, they literally call it that, WPP Open AI platform, is only going to charge you if we hit a certain amount of sales or lead gen targets. Wild. No time and materials, which is which has been like the de facto for the last, 5 decades.
It's totally crazy. It's totally crazy.
It's
I don't
possible now, which is fun, but yeah. Couple other pieces that happened. So this one's a fun one. So Amazon actually launched a creative agent that it's agents everywhere these days that automatically generates creative briefs and storyboards from product reviews and features that you've entered. So you load up you get like new reviews all the time. It's taking those reviews and the most interesting pieces and coming up with ads. And then turning those ads into Prime Video. So these are for video ads, not just for like what you're seeing on Amazon's, mobile app and what have you. So that's interesting. And then our fun OpenAI team is now launching, or they have hired another Meta executive to head up its newly formed advertising division. So this is interesting. Like, I don't know if you've heard at all from like what's happening with ChatGPT ads. We have a couple of customers who've launched ChatGPT ads, and I've been talking to everybody about like measurement. It is so behind right now. So what you get is UTM codes, which is better than nothing. But they essentially you get nothing else. You get a CSV download once a week that tells you how much was spent, what the impressions were, and what the click-throughs were. And that's it. There's no geo-targeting right now. There's no, any other type of targeting. It's just all up to how they configure it. There's no ads manager. There's no like, UI, and you still have to commit something like 250K to, get access to ChatGPT ads. So it's wild, but I'm guessing like, with this hire, they really are going to start to change things around and make a real ad product. But the initial launch has been pretty underwhelming according to what we hear from customers.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a couple weeks back. Anybody who's going to drop 250K on this should be treating this like a brand play.
Yep,
Like
totally.
they're trying to measure this like a deterministic channel is like a laughable waste of time. It will not be
Exactly.
developed enough to make it deterministic for a long period of time. So treat it as a brand play. And if you have the money to spend, and which, to be frank, a lot of companies, especially in the Fortune 500, have an inventory problem. They don't have enough
Yep.
surface areas to spend their budget on. So if I was a CMO of a Fortune 500 or a public company, I would for sure be dropping 250K because like it's an unmarked channel that nobody else is using. Who cares?
Completely agree. All right. Is there anything else that you wanted to chat about that you haven't, or that you've noticed in terms of what's happening in the market?
Okay, here is one. I feel like this session has all been about AI, but I think that's good because this is like the moment that we're living in. I'm kind of curious to get your take. I have been thinking and feeling for the last week that marketers who don't learn how to use at least something like Cowork or Claude Code or the equivalents across GPT and Grok are either going to get left behind or are going to be in a lot less demand. So I'm kind of curious to get your opinion, like, one, what are you telling your own marketers? And then two, what do you think the outcome is? And the outcomes can be one of three things. Either like one, marketers get replaced. Two, the marketers who are technical make more money. Or 3, there's this big separation between technical and non-technical marketers, and and that might have impacts on salaries and compensation. And I'm kind of curious, like, what you think is going to happen the next year.
All right, this is an interesting question. I'll tell you what I'm sort of seeing firsthand. One, if you are not selling a truly AI, focused product, so ignore the Replits and the Cursors and the Claudes and the OpenAIs of the world for a second. All right, just like if you're not one of those companies, your growth rate hasn't increased as a result of the AI revolution. It's still very much you are in the trenches, blocking and tackling, trying to get growth. And now what's happened over the last 2 or 3 quarters is you've adopted all these new AI tools, right? You were sold on the AEO dream, you adopted it. You were sold on some type of AI CMO, this AI that's going to like automatically manage all your Google ads, and you bought it. The problem is none of those tools actually help you drive growth. They just make you more efficient at the tasks that you were already doing. And so the challenge that I see is there's going to be very few all of these marketers are going to be like very AI native. They're going to, post on LinkedIn incessantly about how I have done 200 things in one day. And that's great. Don't get me wrong. There's value and efficiency and speed and velocity. The question then comes of like, okay, are they strategic enough to drive growth? What does that require? That requires understanding the unit economics of your business, understanding the TAM of your business, understanding the right ways to reach that TAM. And what I'm not seeing is any evidence that AI is helping you do those things better than you could have done a year ago. Now, I say that also with, the caveat that the smartest marketers will use AI to figure some of that stuff out, but I haven't seen a sea change in AI's ability to drive actual growth. And that, so like, how do I answer your question? What's going to happen in the next 12 months? Honestly, the same thing that's been happening for the last 5 years. You're going to see a lot of people pitch themselves as AI native, AI first marketers. They're going to get hired. I literally had a LinkedIn exchange 3 days ago where somebody was like, hey, I was interviewing CMOs and this one candidate, they didn't come with slides. They came with a fully built out website with full positioning and it looked brilliant. It was awesome. And I was like, wait, this is a CMO, right? How many people are they inheriting? What is their job? What is the stage of the company? Oh, it's PE backed. There's already 20 people. And you're evaluating this person by their quality of developing a website, right? Because it looks flashy. It looks impressive. It's efficient. It like it grabs your attention. I'm fairly confident, Austin, that person is not going to be in their job in 18 months. And the reason is how fast you do something is not the driver of growth. It's, do you strategically understand your business? And, unfortunately, that is not changing with AI and agents. So I don't think the distribution changes, right? If there's a curve of marketers and it's centered around, there's a massive peak around like 50 percentile, like normal distribution, and then like the top 5% of the people who run the world or who run like the best marketing teams, that's not changing. It's still going to be the same. So that's my take. I think you need a fundamentally different way of looking at what is good in marketing. And I personally haven't seen yet one of these AI tools like change the definition of that.
I think that's really well spoken. And if there was maybe a nugget that I took out of that, it's like tools can help you be more efficient and more effective, but intelligence and intellectual curiosity and thoughtfulness and strategy, all the ingredients that make current workers awesome, those are the things that you can't replace with AI.
No, that's exactly right. I'll give you another example or thought here. All of the knowledge in the world is now freely accessible to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet, if you go and ask, even just in your client base, like go ask the 50 marketers that you work with, hey, how many of you can explain to me what correlation is? And just watch what happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ask them like, what does statistical significance mean? If I flip a coin 100 times, what do you think will happen, right? Just like ask them these questions. Like ask them like, hey, what is CAPI? And like 99% of people will not be able to explain to you what CAPI is. Why is that? The information has been available for now like 3 years, right? Like it's one prompt away. So like you said, the intellectual curiosity, and I'll also be honest, there's also a structural issue, and sometimes it does give me pause. Marketers are probably the least paid in corporate environments. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about like generally, right? In a company, like compared to engineers, PMs, salespeople, maybe support and marketing compete for like probably the lowest paying jobs, in my opinion.
100%.
And so there is a demand and supply here. Do we, as marketing leaders, as businesses, attract the best people into those jobs? And if you don't, then you give them all the tools you can, but does that change the equation? So there's also a structural demand and supply issue here of like, can you actually expect marketers to be the best at this job? So that's I'm speaking from the other side of my mouth here. We're saying like, maybe, yeah, there are certain things where AI is just going to do a much better job. But I actually think what's going to happen is there'll be 10 or 20% of marketers who are going to crush it with AI and agents, and they're going to increase their, compensation and the value add that they're driving for the business. And everybody else is actually going to be on the other end of the spectrum, and nothing changes for them. So it's going to be like the rich get richer, the poor get poorer within like the marketing, function.
Love it. I agree. Love it.
All right. On that note, I hope that wasn't too grim. We bring it to a close. We're going to get back to our weekly schedule. So tune in next week.
No travel.
No
Woo!
Exactly. Hopefully it's getting warm in your part of the world. And I'm starting back on my half marathon training. So everything is getting back to normal, which I'm excited about.
Let's talk half marathon. I did a race last weekend, and we can recast it, and we can talk about your training as well. We'll do that next time.
Sounds like a plan. All right.
All right.
See you next week, Austin. Have a good one.
Bye, y'all.